Hello, and welcome back to the Black Girl Iowa podcast. This is your girl, Emily, and thank you so much, everyone, for allowing me to take a break. So, as you all know, I did go ahead and post, I believe, like last Monday or Sunday, I can't remember, basically that I had postponed episode 16. And one of the primary reasons why I did is because, I just needed a minute to really grasp what I wanted to talk about on this episode, which, as you know, is titled Black Girl Politics. And I really just wanted to make sure that I was in my right headspace when talking about the Democratic National Convention, which took place now about a week and a half ago. So I wanted to just make sure that I took some time to really reflect, think about what those emotions were like when I was watching the DNC, think about the speeches, think about what was being said, the policy ideas that were laid out, and also get a really good idea of how I feel about it and how I wanted to talk about it on this podcast. So that is going to be the headlining thing that we will be talking about today. But first, before we even get into that, I don't have a Black Iowa fact, but what I do have are a couple of things that I think need to be talked about, and I just want to make sure that are being celebrated. So first of all, I want to give a really big shout out to the coordinators of the fifth annual Sista Soul Fest that took place last Sunday at Evelyn K. Davis Park. So this event has been going on for 5 years now, and I just was able to go to it last week. And it was a fantastic event. What the event really does is it gives Black women, Black female entrepreneurs here in Des Moines and in Iowa an opportunity to really showcase their crafts, their talents, their passions. And it was just a really amazing event. I think the only thing about the event, it was hot. It was hot. But that's okay because listen, these women showed up and showed out. We had women that were doing everything from showcasing their clothing lines, their art studios, their passion projects when it comes to jewelry design, candle, health and fitness, clothing, food, literature and books. I mean, we had women doing all kinds. We have so many amazing Black women doing so many amazing things here in the Des Moines area. It was so nice that they had an opportunity to really showcase their talents and put their passions in full display. And it was just really awesome to be able to have an opportunity to go out and support. I was also able to reconnect with a couple of past and future guests on the show. One highlight for me, though, was reconnecting with my girl Glow Rose from Glow Rose Books. And then also in passing, as I'm on my way to order mac and cheese from Chef Joppa at Joppa Experience, running into Latoya Lewis, who will be on a future episode, and she runs Mahogany Doula Services, but also to have a starstruck moment and meet the Miss Iowa USA, Mackenzie Carey. And it was kind of crazy too, because like we both just kind of looked at each other and was just like, oh my God, you're you. So it was really good to see her in person and to kind of chat with her a little bit about her experience at the Miss USA competition. And then also to just catch up with Glow and how she's doing. And it's really awesome to see the small but growing community that Black Girl Iowa is having with Black women being on this show. So again, congratulations to the coordinators of the event. It was a fantastic event. I cannot wait to hopefully participate next year and have an opportunity, to sell merch and all of those really, really great things. So that is one of the current celebrations that I have. The next thing is it's back to school season. So this past Monday, Des Moines Public Schools started. I believe last Friday, a lot of schools like up in Ames and Nevada, Story City, even down in Warren County where Indianola is, Waukee, all these different places, all these kids went off to school. Congratulations. And good luck on a new school year. This also pertains to students at the University of Northern Iowa, University of Iowa, Iowa State University, and my current school of Drake University. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself kudos real quick. I am in the final semester of my master's program. I have 2 classes that I have to take. Graduation day is in December, and I am so happy to be on the final leg of this journey that I am on in receiving my Master of Arts in Communication, where my emphasis is communication leadership and public advocacy. You know, me getting my master's at the start was I'm doing this because someone said I can't. But at the end of the day, I have really learned a lot about the person I am, the type of leader I want to be, and how I want to advocate for people moving forward. So, really excited to get into this last class. Wish me luck. Pray for me. This is not going to be easy, but I'm happy to be doing the work, and also very happy for it to almost be over. So, next thing I want to do real quick, give you guys a little update on what I'm currently into. So things that I'm currently into and whatever right now. So I am currently reading Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I'm about 110 pages in. So far so good. It's definitely like giving me Hunger Games vibes though. So we will see how far I get into it. But to be honest, like to read for pleasure right now is not easy considering how busy I am with work and then also just with having to read for school. I mean, I just had to read like 12 chapters this week, so we'll see. Next, watching. What am I watching? I am watching The Crown. So I started watching The Crown like in May. And then I kind of stopped because, life and stuff. And then I recently jumped back in. I have so many thoughts about The Crown. I'm going to do an episode later on this year about all of the TV I have watched so far in 2024 and like some of the things that I've loved and some of the things that I've been like, oh my gosh. I've watched a lot of documentaries this year, but I really wanted to watch The Crown because it's not that I have like this ridiculous like infatuation or obsession with the royal family. I just don't understand how they work and why they're in power. So I just started watching this. I know of all things to watch, this is what I chose first, right? But I have thoughts. It's really good. And just shout out to the actors. So there's that. What am I listening to right now? Is R&B. Y'all, Jodeci has me in a chokehold right now. And basically, any music from that genre, whether it be late 80s to early 90s New Jack Swing, anything from Johnny Gill to New Edition, I already said Jodeci, SWV, Total. I mean, all of that music, like that. So it's like early Missy Elliott too. Girl, stop it. Like I am in a chokehold for R&B right now, especially like that 90s R&B sound, which is really funny because like when a lot of this stuff came out, I was like less than 10 years old. So kind of one of those things where it's just like, I shouldn't have been singing Come and Talk to Me. But I absolutely was. And it's still a jam. It's a bop. It's a vibe. And I'm still listening to it. What am I loving right now? Okay, I posted about this. And I am loving, I have a mush plush. It was given to me from a dear friend as I did go through something earlier this year. And it is a triceratops. It is a weighted plush animal, basically, weighted stuffed animal. His name is Travis. He's a triceratops. No relation to Travis Kelsey, even though you guys know that, I kind of love him, but I've had to stop loving him for obvious reasons. Basically, though, it's kind of one of those things where it's meant to help with like your anxiety. And I find myself sleeping with this plush animal every night. And it really brings me comfort. And it's like one of the best things that I could have been given. And so I would highly recommend that if you're someone that has anxiety or sometimes like you just need to hold something, get one of these. I looked online, they're like $10 right now, and it's just something really nice to have and to hold. I know some of you are probably thinking, well, why don't you hold George? George doesn't like to be held. My dog sets very clear and distinct boundaries, and I respect them. So I'll get like to hold George for like a little bit, and then next thing you know, he's like, okay, no, get off me. So I have to put George down. He goes to his corner, I go to mine. But I highly recommend you guys getting one of these plushes because, again, they are just so nice. And I'm sorry, like, I don't care what anyone says, you are never too old for a stuffed animal. If that stuffed animal or that security blanket or whatever it is, if it brings you peace and comfort, have it, do it, whatever. You're not too old, okay? And last but not least, what am I working on? So, I am currently working on my 10th diamond painting of 2024. I will do a blog post about this because I know like there are some people have asked me like, Emily, what's this with the diamond paintings? Diamond art is a hobby that I have that I absolutely love and adore. It's basically pixelated art with these itty bitty tiny shiny gems, and they are called diamonds. They're multifaceted, so when the light hits them they shine a certain way, and you basically are taking these itty bitty little gems, the diamonds, and you're placing them on a canvas that has a printed image on it. And I love this art because I've been doing this art since like 2019, and one of the reasons why like I really love it is because it's tedious, it's time consuming, but also like to a certain extent it's just fun to do. And you get these really pretty pictures out of them, and so I just finished one that is of Pisces, because I'm a Pisces, I'm a March Pisces. This really awesome artist, her name is Chrisabug. She commissions artwork through Diamond Art Club. And so I just did this beautiful piece with Pisces with these two kind of like ethereal mermaids, and there are koi fish in it. And it's like all these like really pretty blues and pinks and purples and some orange. And it's so pretty. And I cannot wait to get it hung. But yeah, so that was number 9. Number 10, I'm actually working on for an event called Drills and Chills, where you have between October no you have between September 1st and October 31st to complete a project that is spooky or Halloween or fall themed. So I just started. Well, I will be starting later tonight. My first of 2 kits that I'll be working on, and I'll just have to write a blog post about diamond art because it's just one of the most fun things, and it's really like brought me like a lot of peace and joy to be able to turn on a TV show or an audiobook and just work on these amazing art pieces. So that's that, and I'm really excited. And I'll have to do like yeah, I'll have to just do a blog post about it so you guys can read all about it, and then maybe I'll post a video about it on my YouTube channel, and I'll link it so you guys can take a look. So now let's talk about why I'm here today. So, as you all know, I'm born and raised right here in Iowa. I don't need to keep saying that, right? I think, though, what some people kind of don't realize is that for a really long time, Iowa was kind of the start of the political cycle. So, we have, which typically happens in January, the Iowa caucus. And usually, the Iowa caucus will set the tone for how a presidential campaign and general election will turn out. Being from Iowa, I have always been very well vested in the political process thanks to my parents. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that my parents were not born with the right to vote because the Voting Rights Act was not passed until 1965. My parents were born in the 50s. Really, me and my sister, our generation in our family, we were the first ones that were like born with the right to vote. And so, because of that, my mom and dad, they always talked politics with me and my sister. They always were sure and knew that we knew what was going on and what was happening in the world around us. I remember how excited my parents were when Bill Clinton was elected president in 1982, and I think one of the reasons is because my parents got together in like the late 70s. They were married in the early 80s, and the first decade of their marriage was the Reagan years and the Bush years. And so they really saw how opportunity and just being economically stable was literally just ripped away from them. And I think that was another reason why they really wanted me and my sister to really know what our rights were and why it was important to vote and know your candidates and what they are about and what they represent. So, I have always been aligned with the Democratic Party. So I'm a registered Democrat, always have been, probably always will be. My very first election that I got to vote in was John Kerry and George W. Bush, not H, but George W. Bush. And I remember being 18 years old, and it was my first semester of college, and coming back to Des Moines and voting and watching the election results with my parents, only to find out that John Kerry lost and that we were going to do another 4 years of Bush. I didn't really have a big understanding of what that meant to me economically. But as the years kind of went on and I started to see the decline and the constant need of all of these government bailouts. Like, I think during that time frame when I was in college from 2004 to 2008, we saw the airline industry get bailed out, the banks get bailed out, auto industry get bailed out, and then by the time I graduated from college, the housing crisis happened and there was the big economic decline. And around that time, Obama was in office now, right? He went up against John McCain, and that was my second election that I was able to vote in. And while we were all running on a high of yes, we can. And I had the opportunity to not only get a better understanding of how politics were going to affect me in my daily life, but also I had the opportunity to see presidential candidates speak. Granted, I saw John Edwards in 2004. He came down to Simpson College. Considering how his political career turned out, I don't really like to brag about that one. But I did end up seeing and meeting Barack Obama, and I met Hillary Clinton. They both came to Simpson College and gave great speeches. And I worked on the Obama campaign. I used to make phone calls and I did some door knocking when I was in college. And it was really awesome that I got to have those opportunities at a young age because I really got to see how powerful and impactful you can be when you decide that you want to be a part of the change you want to see. And that was really, really important to me. And then also, I was pretty vested in local, state, and also just other elections that were happening around the country and within my area. Always made sure that if there was an opportunity to go vote, whether it be for an alderman, a councilwoman, or a school board representative, I was always trying to make sure that I was at the polls casting my vote. The other thing I need to also just go ahead and mention here. So I live in Iowa. So Iowa was actually flipped in 2016. And that was really frustrating for all the reasons you guys can probably guess, because the Iowa that I grew up in was very progressive, very open to different cultures and people. And it once 2016 kind of hit, and granted I hadn't been living here at that time, but it almost seemed like Iowa was becoming a foreign place to me, and there was more hate and despair out as opposed to positivity and love and progressiveness. So moving back to Iowa was not easy, knowing that I would move back to my home state that was now a red state. But let me be clear, when people do ask me, Emily, where are you from? It's always hands down, never a doubt. I am from Des Moines. I am from a blue county. So Polk County is a blue county. So I believe also Johnson and Sinn County are also too. And that's where two of the other bigger populated areas are in the state. So we have that. But to kind of go a little bit into really what's kind of happened in the last, I would probably say, 6 weeks. It's been a lot. And, kind of like everyone else, I've definitely been processing as much as I possibly can about everything that has happened in the last 6 weeks. I remember when at the beginning of July or mid-July, President Biden and former President Trump, they had a debate. I refused to watch. I'm going to tell you right now, I was not happy President Biden was seeking reelection. I felt like, in a way, was just not fit to really be able to go through a second term, another 4 years. I felt like while his policies and his understanding of what's going on wasn't out of touch, I felt like because of his age, I felt like his ability to lead and to really take on the most stressful job in the world, I didn't think he was capable of it. And granted, if he was going to write it off into the sunset, I was definitely going to vote for Biden, but I wasn't happy about it. Under no circumstance would I ever vote for Donald Trump. I need to just make sure that I make that perfectly clear. Under no circumstance would I ever vote Donald Trump. It would never happen. It is not, that is not okay with me for my vote, but it was just never going to happen. That being said, like everybody else, I got on Instagram on Sunday, June 21st, that morning, only to see a post from President Biden saying that he was not going to be seeking reelection. And then the follow-up post was that he was endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris to run and seek the Democratic nominee. And what's wild is that the first thing I thought when he announced that was, why didn't you do this like a year ago? Like, I could not understand why it took 3 months prior to probably a defining moment in our democracy. Why did you wait till then to say, you know what, I'm not going to do it? When really people I know have been telling you, bro, you should not do this again. And it's not for anything other than you can't handle it. You physically cannot handle this. And my initial thought when the announcement was also made was, while I am excited that we have the potential to nominate the first Black and South Asian woman to the presidency, I was incredibly excited about that. But at the same time, there's a little bit of despair there. You want to know why? And the first thing I said, because I remember I was in the family with my group chat, and my family, we were talking about it, and I said, you know what? All of this is going to be for naught unless white women get it together and they vote accordingly. Why do I say that? Because in 2016, according to every media outlet you can possibly find, you could Google this, and this is basically common knowledge at this point. In 2016, 52% of women voted for Trump. That 52%, that Trump presidency led to 3 extreme conservative appointments to our Supreme Court in Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. What has happened since then, you guys? We've seen affirmative action overturned. We've seen Roe v. Wade overturned. Our inalienable rights and freedoms are currently at risk because that happened. And then what happened in 2020? It went from 52% to 55% of white women voted for Donald Trump, even though Joe Biden won, right? That's an increase despite 4 horrific years where we saw an increase in inflation, an increase in taxes on the middle class and the poor. We also saw COVID, and then just the start of the attack on our reproductive rights, the attack on education and the ideologies behind critical race theory, and the attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, whether it be at a low state level, or even at a federal level. It's been incredibly disappointing to see all of this happen. But at the same time, very grateful that Biden did win in 2020, and that VP Harris was also nominated as our first female Black South Asian vice president. And I will say that in the days after Biden made the announcement that he wasn't going to run, and that Kamala Harris was the one that was going to step up and run for that Democratic nomination, some things started to happen. And my weariness as a voter, as a constituent, as someone that is living in this country and is, for the most part, proud to be an American, as you know, even though that's a conversation for another time, changed. And while I think it didn't take much for Black people and people of color to understand whom within our society needs to step up, because we all know that historically white women are constantly voting against their own interests. But something happened to where white women, Black women, white men, Black men, and a lot of other people that represent our country started to step up and actually speak out about why this election was going to be important for the progress of our future as Americans, for our children's future, for our children's future. I went ahead and it really seemed like for almost like a week, almost 2 weeks, these grassroots efforts to fundraise money for the Harris and now Harris Walz campaign was actually kind of astronomical. And I took some notes, and you know, how people mobilized to back Kamala Harris and Tim Walz was through virtual community on Zoom. That's literally all people were doing. We have, for example, White Women for Kamala Harris. They had a Zoom call, I believe, on July 26th, Over 164,000 white women got together and raised $8.5 million between that Thursday night call and the next day on Friday afternoon. Then you had on July 29th, White Dudes for Harris had a call on Zoom, raised 3.7 million with over 180,000 participants. And before that, Win with Black Women on the 21st, actually, so that same day that the endorsement happened, those women led the way with 44,000 on the call. They raised $1.8 million. They're saying that this campaign and also like in relation to the Trump campaign could potentially see $1 billion in fundraising and grassroots efforts to get these candidates nominated. Okay? That speaks volumes, but I'm specifically talking about when it comes to VP Harris and Governor Walz. This all happened before the Democratic National Convention. So for me, I remember watching CNN and them saying, this Democratic National Convention, this is going to be a big deal. This is going to be all about them figuring it all out and saying all this stuff, and it's going to be big. It's going to be big, right? That's like what all of the news outlets were talking about. Even Fox News was even like, actually, this is probably going to be a big deal, right? And since then, other organizations have raised money for this campaign. And it's almost like, thanks to social media and our 24-hour news cycle, we knew about all of these things as they were happening. And I started to get more and more excited. I think one of the things that I have really enjoyed is seeing people on social media really being activated on not only understanding why this election is important, but also just having that foresight to know that what you say on this platform moving forward is going to be critically important, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. But if you are speaking from facts and you're speaking from the truth, and you're sourcing yourself to not have to be fact checked into saying, oh, well, this person lied, it's really making a difference. And it's really getting people to really engage in conversations that otherwise might be seen as uncomfortable. So leading into the DNC, I started to feel a little bit more excited, and I knew that it was going to be important for me to watch the DNC. And it's basically a lot. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of delegates. It's like, I think in the United Way Center, it's like that seats like almost 30,000 people or something like that. That's probably way too many, but whatever. I just knew that over this 4 nights in Chicago, there was going to be a lot that was going to happen. A lot of speeches, a lot of, commentary, a lot of talk about Governor Walz and his record and his story, a lot of talk about VP Harris and her record and her story, but also making sure that there was going to be a time to pay homage to the people that came before us, especially when it comes to Joe Biden. Because while in the moment, yeah, I was definitely upset that it took him so long to drop out of the race. But at the same time, when you get a little bit more far removed and you really kind of think about what these last 3.5, almost 4 years, the toll that they have put on him, how selfless it was of him to take a step back and say, you know what, I'm going to have this other person give it a go because they have what it takes to win. That's something that's highly commendable. So I made sure that every night for 4 nights, I was home. My internet was up and working. I had something to work on, something to eat, and I was going to watch the DNC. I guess in a way, like, I didn't really know what to expect. And I will say that I watched everything. I watched the commentary and all of that great stuff. Overall, before I kind of get into some of my breakdowns, I think every night of the Democratic National Convention was incredibly powerful. It was well organized. It was thoughtful. And I really think that they did an incredible job of making an impact through the importance of storytelling. As I get older, I'm really starting to understand why storytelling is so important. When you tell a story, it should invoke a reaction from people. And regardless of what it is, that reaction should have the capability to, if not make someone take action, but make somebody think about what it is that they were just told. Some of the impactful and important stories that were shared for me during this time in the convention, first and foremost, were the stories of three women telling their stories in reference to abortion and reproductive rights. Abortion and reproductive rights, that is always just going to be a hot button topic. To be completely honest, I don't know why. I think that, abortion is healthcare. I feel like this idea, this misinformation that's out there that women are just out here getting abortions just because they don't want to have kids and this, that, and whatever, and they're being irresponsible is so far fetched and out of touch. And it's just grossly irresponsible to think that about people. But hearing these stories, and I remember the first couple that spoke, and they talked about how their baby died at 18 weeks. And they knew that their baby was not going to have a chance and not have a viable chance after 18 weeks. The fact that the mother was practically knocking on death's doorstep in Texas before she can get any type of medical care, that made me sick to my stomach. The girl that basically was sexually assaulted and I believe she said she was 12 or 13 years old and she had to take a pregnancy test. Like, those stories just really had an impact on me. And it just got me thinking of, Governor Walz said during his speech that basically people should just really mind their own damn business, and that's really what it is. And also on top of that, women should have the autonomy to make decisions on their bodies. But in that specific case of the woman losing her child, her husband is sitting right there next to her, and he is watching his wife go through something so traumatic, and there is nothing he can do about it. That hurt my soul. It really did. And anybody, honestly, in my opinion, if you are pro-life, you're lying to yourself. Because if the baby's life is no longer viable, why can't we save the life of the mother? It's such a conundrum, and I don't understand how people don't understand something like that. But those stories were incredibly impactful, and why it is so important that these abortion bans, they need to stop, because ultimately they're going to start killing people. And this task force and all these other crazy ass things that Project 2025 wants to put in place if Trump is elected, that is wild. That is absolutely wild. I haven't started watching The Handmaid's Tale yet, but many of people have told me that's exactly where we are headed as a nation, and that's disturbing. Also, having people speak on gun violence, I mean, you know, considering that I have parents that are educators and they are in public schools every day, have nephews that are in a public school every day. We know people that are in public schools every day. The fact that students are having active shooter drills bothers me. And considering the fact that that's also something that nothing has been done about assault rifles, about the AR-15s, about the high capacity magazines or anything like that. Nothing has been done. And so hearing those stories, hopefully we can see some change with a Harris Walz administration. And then last but not least, understanding that the current situation in Palestine and the Gaza Strip, it needs to end and there needs to be a ceasefire, but also hearing from an American family whose child is currently and still being held captive. That is impactful, because once again, that lets us know that these things are real and they have an impact on this. And this is now a part of this person's story. So we have to listen and we have to understand, we have to advocate, and we have to hope that some type of change is going to be made. Now, before I get into the speeches, there is one part of the DNC that I need to go ahead and talk about. So behind me, as you can see, and if you're just listening, you can't see it, but behind me is my kitchen. Okay. So when the roll call started, and I believe Alabama was first, and they started playing Sweet Home Alabama, it was like, okay, this is going to take a while. Let me go ahead and go into the kitchen, make myself something to eat. Right. So I go into the kitchen and I start making myself something to eat. and I'm hearing all of this stuff. And I think by that time I had heard California Love, but I knew like California was going to pass to the end, right? Which totally fine, right? And I was like, okay, that's cute. I had heard Colorado at that time, and their song was September by Earth, Wind, and Fire. Love Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's not my favorite song, but whatever. And then we got to Hawaii, or excuse me, no. Then we got to the Democrats abroad, so people that mail in their votes. They did Love Train by the OJs. And I was like, oh, okay, so I think I'm starting to get it. Then I want to point this out to the state of Georgia. Oh, y'all did that. The fact of the matter that like I'm in the kitchen and I'm chopping up cucumbers, and all of a sudden I hear the beginning hook to Welcome to Atlanta, and then I'm like, oh, okay, so Georgia came to play. Got it. And then when I hear Lil Jon, stop playing. Like, I don't think y'all understand. Like, everybody always says that, like, you can't, like, people will say you can't summon a generation with a song. You absolutely can. For my generation, for the class of 2004, it's for the kids that grew up in the 2000s, or excuse me, that graduated from high school in the 2000s. Lil Jon is a part of the soundtrack of your life. So the fact that we heard Lil Jon yell what, and the whole delegation of Georgia is turning up to turn down for what? I was like, okay, cool. So this isn't what I thought it was. Because I even thought, okay, cool. Like they have a DJ, like whatever, DJ Cassidy. Okay, that's fine. Whatever. No big deal, right? But at that point, I came out of my kitchen and I sat down and I watched the roll call. And, if there is one thing that will bring people together in this country is music. And I feel like the DNC did something very innovative and different in that they figured out a way to have a song be a perfect representation of the state that is giving the delegates to the national to the Democratic nominee, but at the same time it speaks to the people that are from there, and also it gets other people excited. So I really enjoyed the roll call, y'all. Like the roll call was probably like my favorite part of the entire DNC, and I will have to just go ahead and say that some of my favorites: California, DC coming out with Let Me Clear My Throat by DJ Clue, Hawaii coming out with 24 Karat Magic because of Bruno Mars, Indiana, Jackson's, Iowa, I mean, duh, we just did Celebration by Kool and the Gang, but I loved it. Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Michigan with Lose Yourself by Eminem, Minnesota. I mean, of course, you have to play Prince. So that was fantastic what they did. Kiss in 1999. Montana with Lenny Kravitz's rendition of American Woman. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Nevada. What did Nevada have? I have it written here. Mr. Brightside by the Killers. I mean, again, 2004. Like, that song was like everywhere back then. So that was great. New York, North Carolina. The fact that y'all played Petey Pablo, yo, sick. Shut it down. It was perfect. Like, I don't care. I remember being in high school, and granted, I am from Des Moines, Iowa, but when that song came on, everybody from North Carolina, don't matter. It is what it is. That was fantastic. Pennsylvania with the Black and Yellow by Wiz Khalifa, and then Motown Philly by Boyz II Men was great. Texas, oh, Texas. The fact that y'all played Beyonce, I was kind of hoping for like Beyonce and Megan Thee Stallion with the Savage remix, but it's okay. Texas Hold'em was absolutely perfect. Virginia playing Timbaland, and Washington Can't Hold Us by Macklemore. And then I cannot stand this about the state of Wisconsin, but y'all playing Jump Around, paying homage also to your Wisconsin Badgers. Even though I can't stand the Badgers, that was kind of epic. So the roll call, hands down, favorite part of the entire DNC. And I also think too that like, again, like that was just such a really good representation. And then I've seen videos of them comparing the roll call for the DNC to the roll call at the RNC. And I mean, it's like salt and pepper versus other seasonings. Like it was perfect, right? So I absolutely loved it, hands down. I hope they continue to do that because I just felt like it was such a great representation of the people from that state and really leveraging music to bring people together, which I absolutely loved. All right, let's talk about these speeches. So there were a lot of speeches. There were a lot of speeches. And I mean, you had former presidents speak. So Barack Obama and Bill Clinton spoke. You had former first ladies, so Jill Biden and also Michelle Obama. You had former First Lady Hillary Clinton and presidential nominee. You had a lot of just like different senators and representatives of the House and the Senate, and then also like a lot of Republicans were there too, y'all. They were just like, no, we're not with this. Wild, okay? There were a couple of speeches that really spoke to me, and then I'll talk about VP Harris's speech, and then I'll kind of give you guys my final thoughts. So, first of all, Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett, when she cries, I cry. Okay. It has been so great to kind of see her stand in her purpose with being in the House of Representatives and being a junior congresswoman. But when she retold her story of meeting VP Harris after going through all of this chaos within her position, having VP Harris look at her and ask her what's wrong, for a Black woman, we have to always be better, faster, stronger, and smarter than everybody else in the room to get half the credit, right? And in that moment when Representative Crockett was telling that story and getting emotional, I understood it, because in that moment, as everything is happening, you still have to be strong. But when someone sees you and they see that you need help, that you need empathy and you need compassion, that lets us breathe. And that was so incredibly important. And I love the fact that she was able to be emotional and vulnerable in that moment. I felt like everyone in the United Center kind of like wrapped their arms around her and was like, sis, it is okay. And I loved that. Absolutely adored it. Loved it. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. First of all, I want to live in an America where we can have a president named Hakeem. Okay? A president named Hakeem from Brooklyn with a full blown New York accent. I need it in my life. I really wanted to make it happen, because what I really loved about his speech, first of all, it read more like a sermon and it was passionate through and through. But also, when he said, we broke up with you for a reason. Donald Trump can spin the block all he wants, but there's no reason for us to ever get back together. Been there, done that. We're not going back. When I tell you, don't we all have an ex that we're just like, why are you still over here? Like, go away, right? Go home, Roger. That's exactly like what that gave to me, and loved it. And I also really love how he leveraged a piece of scripture in his speech saying that, out of the darkness comes the light. And I love that. I feel like in the darkness mainly being is that, we're just in this certain level of uncertainty with who is going to be our president. And the light is Kamala Harris. And I love that metaphor. I thought that was so great. First Lady Michelle Obama, her dedication showing the similarities between her upbringing and Kamala Harris's, I thought was fantastic. But her speech was so different from the when they go low, we go high. It was more so her being vocal about what the years since her husband's presidency have been like. If you read her first book, Becoming, you would know that the whole birther movement and all of that crap, that had a really big impact on the Obama family, and that actually endangered them in a lot of ways. And I really felt like First Lady Obama was really able to say what she had been wanting to say about Trump, but hadn't been, because she felt that it was more important to show all of the reasons why she has more class than he ever does. But when she hit us with his limited narrow view on the world, made him feel threatened by the existence of two hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be Black. How many of us have felt that? And it's just like, you guys are only saying this because of the obvious, and I know what you're doing. But then when she hit us with, wait, I want to know who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might be one of those black jobs. Michelle did not come to play. Michelle says, you know what? I see what you said about my husband and what you said about all these people, and my good sis, Kamala, it's not going any further. So, and the job you want is, in fact, a black job. For that, I was hooting and hollering right here in my apartment, screaming. And again, I just thought that her speech was top tier. And I feel like she honestly spoke from a place that really resonated with a lot of people who were just overall fed up with the bullshit from the Trump administration, from his lackeys, from his MAGA supporters, and just really his overall fan base. Like, I know I'm sick of it. So I really, really love what she had to say. And then when I look at what President Barack Obama had to say, first of all, I could listen to Barack Obama read the phone book and not get tired of it. He is just one of those people that he speaks with such conviction and overall knowledge, and with a certain reassurance and a confidence that I most definitely admire. But I really love how he talked about his own presidential journey, the accomplishments that he had, and also reminding us of where we don't want to be as Americans. And that is, he said, we don't need 4 more years of bluster and blundering and chaos. We have seen that movie before, and we all know the sequel is usually worse. Top tier. We don't I don't want to see another Trump presidency. I don't. And I also really appreciated that he took the time, and a lot of other people did too. He took the time to also highlight Kamala Harris's record and her accomplishments, not only as a prosecutor, but also as a district attorney in California, and then also as a US senator, and in her role as vice president. So, just paying homage and really showing this woman's body of work are more representative of the stories that we want to tell about what it means to be successful in America. And I really enjoyed that. Last, but certainly not least, VP Harris. Sis had almost a 4-minute standing ovation before she had to be like, look, let's talk some business and get to work. Absolutely loved it. I love how the beginning of her speech before she accepted the nomination, because I feel like once she accepted the nomination, she from there really went into talking about just different policies and things that she wants to implement, and also reminding people that Donald Trump has shown us who he has been and who he is, and she was reminding us of what we've already seen. But I think the first part of her speech resonated with me because she told the story of how she was received within her village, within her community as a child, her and her sister, and her mom, and how her village gave her the encouragement and the validation keep moving forward and to keep advocating for people. And I feel like a lot of that really speaks to this podcast and why I decided to do this. I want this show, as I've said many a times before, to be a place where women, Black women, can share their stories, can get encouragement and praise from one another, and also be a resource to one another and to give each other that validation and to share their stories. And that's why community is just so important. And when you start to give back to your community, you start to learn and grow, and then your community is also going to give back to you. And I feel like that's exactly what happened in her career path. But also, what I appreciate about her convention speech is she laid out her plan. She let us know. And this is something that a lot of commentators on Fox News, and then there were a couple of conservative commentators on CNN and MSNBC that clock it, because they were like, oh, well, she hasn't said anything about policy or anything like this, and she's fear mongering. And I think it was Anderson Cooper had to tell the guy, bro, that's exactly what Donald Trump has been doing this entire time in his first race and also in this one. So I don't know what you're talking about. I feel like there's a difference between not knowing someone's record, not knowing someone's history, and just making up crap to get people scared. And then there's also taking legitimate and objective examples of somebody's behavior and showing it to people and saying, hey, you remember when this person did this on this day at this time? This is what it is. Clock it. And that's exactly what VP Harris did. And that's basically what a lot of the other speakers at the DNC overall did. She laid out her plans for reproductive rights, border security, foreign policy, the current conflict in Gaza, and the end of the war. She talked about taxes and then just reestablishing our inalienable freedoms. So the freedom to a free education, the freedom to enjoy clean air, the freedom to be able to, provide healthcare. Yeah, like all of these things that like we should have, like there shouldn't be a tax on clean air. You know what I'm saying? There shouldn't be a tax on drinking clear water. Like this water here that I am drinking right now, you guys can't see it unless you're watching the video. This is a right. I shouldn't have to pay extra for this. And the people that are in charge should also want me to have this. Like it's wild to me, right? It's wild to me that some people think that those rights aren't deserved. And I feel like the policies and the things that she really laid out and she talked about, and I'm pretty sure she's talking about on the campaign trail, and she most definitely will be talking about on September 10th during the debate. Those are all things that are really important. And that kind of brings me to my final thoughts on the DNC, my final thoughts on Kamala Harris, on Governor Walz, and just on the DNC altogether. And I will say that I would have loved to have talked about every speech that I really enjoyed, but this would be like a 4-hour long podcast, and I'm really trying to keep this down to an hour and a half. But after watching the DNC and watching some commentary, going back and looking at some speeches, looking at old DNC speeches from conventions of the past, and also taking a look at some things that happened at the Republican National Convention. The DNC, the Democratic National Convention that took place in Chicago. As I watched the camera angles and the different types of people from all different walks of life, you could not tell who was rich. You couldn't tell who was poor. You couldn't tell who was college educated, who wasn't. You couldn't tell who's living paycheck to paycheck or who has money in the bank. You couldn't tell any of those things. What I saw as I watched the Democratic National Convention is I saw a true representation of what patriotism actually looks like. I feel like the term patriotism has been commandeered by conservative extremists that think that patriotism is a reestablishment of good old rules and good old boys and the prioritization of whiteness and white comfortability. And this DNC, this convention, as I looked around and on these videos and I saw the people, it was the perfect representation of what America represents, in addition to what it looks like when people are actively engaged in the democratic process. When people are actively engaged in who they are not only voting for, but who's going to represent them in all of these different places. I feel like everyone was excited to see VP Harris, but also people in Michigan were excited to see Jasmine Crockett. People in Florida were excited to see Hakeem Jeffries. People in California were excited to see Pete Buttigieg. It was such an amazing crossing of patriotism, of goodwill, of spirit, of common thought, that it's really sad that when we think of patriotism, we think of the extremists that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. We think of MAGA Republicans that put, giant Trump flags on their souped up F-50s. We think of the conservatives that, are posting on the 4th of July pictures of them in July, or in our American flag bikinis and t-shirts, popping Budweiser and saying America. That's what they have led us to believe it is, but it is actually not. To be a patriot means to be actively involved. To be a patriot means to understand that differences don't always have to divide. us. And being a patriot, I think also means, and this is something that VP Harris said, is that she loves this country and she's going to do what she needs to do to not only protect the country, but to protect the people that are living within it. And I think that that's incredibly important. And I feel like this was probably one of the best showcases of patriotism that I have seen in my 38 years here on this earth, living in this country. And I am looking forward to not only seeing more representation of this, but also doing my patriotic duty in casting my vote for Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz for the next president of the United States and their administration. So that's just how I feel about everything. I probably should have said this before, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it now. You know, this podcast is my baby. This podcast is something that it was a long time in the making and it's something that I really care about. But I also just want to go ahead and say that this podcast, these are my opinions. This is what I think. This has nothing or anything to do with anybody else but me. And the one thing I also will not tolerate is any type of hate speech or trolling after I do put this up, because, you know, there will be people, probably people even that I think are in my circle, that aren't going to agree with anything that I said, and that's totally fine. But if I have to respect your thoughts and beliefs, I do believe that you should go ahead and respect mine. So that's all I'm going to say. But as for, you know, these upcoming elections and all of those things, I am very excited. I cannot wait to cast my ballot. There are also some really important races happening here in the state of Iowa, and so if you are in Iowa, I'll be sure to put down some links so you can know where to go to vote. You can also know what elections are actually happening, what bills are looking to be passed in our House and in our state Senate, because really we need to be engaged in the voting process for more than just the general election. Anytime there's an opportunity to vote, I think it is our duty as Americans to put our votes in. So I'll have all that information for you guys, though, in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I know it is a long time coming, but I am so happy that you are all here and listening to this episode. If you do want more Black Girl Iowa, head over to my website, www.blackgirliowa.com. Merch is coming soon. I look to having a Google form for pre-orders out by the end of September. We're going to do t-shirts, sweatshirts, and I might do one other little bonus item. So we will see how things go from there. Don't forget, new episode will be fresh next week, next Monday. I will tell you guys this, though. The next episode, I have a great episode with a good friend of mine. We are going to be talking about generational differences between millennials and Gen Zers. So that's going to be a fantastic episode, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear my thoughts. Signing off, this is Emily with Black Girl Iowa, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye.